Hey colorists, my name is Mike, and today I want to talk about something I avoid like my phone when my mother is calling it, and that is sexuality in comics. I've never been asked to color anything like this drawing here, and I have a feeling that eventually professionally, I'm gonna have to broach the subject, so I may as well get some experience with it. So I happened upon the Color Battles site on DeviantArt, and I thought that I would throw my hat in the ring because this was this week's or this month's or whatever it is image. And this is Vampirella and Morrigan, and they are diddling each other or whatever. And it's just something I'm so uncomfortable with because it doesn't do anything for me. And I don't mean vampire lesbianism doesn't do anything for me. I mean, like, this could be Iron Man and whoever. Like, none of it I don't get it. It doesn't seem to serve the story in any meaningful way. It's like, I'm all for nudity, but make it make sense. Westworld is such a great example of that. Like, all the characters are naked all the time, and you're not going, why is Thandie Newton standing there naked? That's stupid. It's a part of the story. So if you want to make people naked, or you want chicks to grab other chicks' crotches, give it a reason. This just seems to be a little gratuitous. It's like every 80s action movie ever when like a naked chick would just jump out of a cake for no reason. Like, there's a reason we look back on those and we think how stupid that is. Yet, like, if you can make purposeful boobs, then it's tasteful. It's excellent. So, anyways, I want to get some experience with this. And so I've been clicking around this image and looking at it, and something didn't sit right with me with these inks. They seem kind of low resolution, so I was checking the file size and the DPI and the whole thing. And I went back and looked at the original inks, and there are links below to the originals and the flats that I'm using. And I noticed that the originals had gray pixels. The difference is that the flattest converted all the pixels to black and white. And that's a super important distinction. Now, for some print, depending on how you're printing, what you're printing on, it is important to have monochrome colors and flats. But generally speaking, especially if you're doing a webcomic, there is no reason to have non-anti-aliased edges. And I will show you just what I mean. This bothers me, this area right on her elbow. Because I'm looking at that and I'm going, why would that be shadowed? Because the whole point of hatching is to create optical grays, to darken an area. And the belly button and the crease up her chest, like, I get it. This sort of makes sense. This doesn't make as much sense. There could be shadow over here. And everywhere else there's hatching, I'm kind of like totally cool with. This type of hatching on the wall here, that's super standard. And this over here, it makes sense. But this is like, why is that there and why does it look the way that it does? So if you zoom in on it, you see that there are no gray pixels. It's all black pixels and transparent pixels. Now, if we look at the original line art, there are lots of gray pixels, and it's a lot softer. And the image itself, there's a huge distinction. Look at these edges between that and that. And maybe in low resolution on the printed page at an 8x10 or whatever, you're not going to notice that. But on the digital screen, it's a huge deal. And there was no real reason to convert that. If you need to make that conversion for print, then do that. But you shouldn't be working with inks that are already have such rigid edges. It just doesn't look nice. Now look at this original image. The inks look much softer, and it's just better in every way. So how do we resolve that? It's super simple fix. Now, I am going to do color holds, and so this is where it gets a little tricky. Is that when I take this original line art and I set it to multiply, what is that going to do? It's going to take all of the white pixels and make them transparent. And then the closer you get to black, the less transparency you have. So the black pixels are 0% transparent, and then every gradation along the value scale. So if I have these sitting on top of the line art that the flats are presented with, look at all these pixels that were lost. They didn't simply convert all of the pixels to black. What they did was they used some sort of threshold, and I'm assuming they probably just right-clicked and converted the layer to monochrome, And that was going to take a certain amount of pixels at a certain value and make them black, and everything else and make it transparent. So now you're losing the pixels of the original artwork, which maybe in some of these hatchings, on just the ones on her, on Vampirella here, aren't bad. But you're also, you're sacrificing the quality of the artist's work. So be careful with that. Be careful how, I'm not saying don't convert to black and white, because there are certain reasons when you would have to or when you would want to, but preserve the integrity of the artwork. You need to do it the right way. So we are not going to use these at all, and I know how to do color holds with gray pixels, and I like all these gray pixels in here. So that is what we are going to do. Now when I look at an image, my first thing is I usually, if it's a more complicated body posture, I'm going to go up on top here. I might want to just make sure there aren't any errors in form that I can correct or hide with color. I see a couple things that are a little bit weird. And I've looked at a few pictures of her. Like, see how this is loose here? You would think that when she's extending her back and her chest, her entire breastplate, which is arched up, and her spine is arched out and back, you would think that it would tighten these and not loosen them. So I don't quite understand that, but that's okay. We don't have, there's no real way for me to color those and make them look tight. See how they're kind of, this is like slacked against her body and this is bubbled up, and then there's going to be a shadow under here. But when I see hatching, to do color holds where I'm going to color the line art to blend it in, the places where I find that essential is areas of super hard light, and this is candlelight and very soft, dramatic lighting, mood light. So because of that, there's going to be a lot of cast shadows, a lot of shadows in here. We're not going to have a hard light source, so we're not going to have to color the line art there, that side of the line art. But I also like to color areas of hatching that aren't necessarily shade, because sometimes artists can get a little bit overzealous, or sometimes there's just hatching everywhere, and you need to have color come through. This isn't a good example. This is a very open drawing, but I take a black pen, just a black pen on top of the image, and I kind of color where the hatching is, just to see if those areas of shadow make any sense. And I don't want this, I want this. Explain what I'm doing here. Just a minute. Okay, so I've kind of increased the hatching spots to see what happens. So all of this on her arm, I love how all of this looks. I think it's great. It looks really good. These little creases, we can increase those, we can decrease those, and give her butt some shape here. This, who knows how much shadow is back here. It looks fine no matter what. It doesn't really matter how much we add to the black on the legs. They're just going to have slight color pops, so we don't need to worry about holding any of that or doing whatever we want. Notice that under her breast here, it doesn't matter how much we add. Like this, you can still see all the shape, and whatever shadows cast, or if we have light coming overhead, whatever's going on, it's fine. The shape to her shoulder here is fine. The belly button is fine. See, 2 problem spots. Why don't those make sense? Well, first reason is we see light pointed at this elbow. A black spot denotes super shade, right? If there's light pointed at this elbow, why is that in black? Second of all, if that's shaded, then if this is blocking out the light, then wouldn't there be more? Wouldn't this also be shaded? Heavy? Wouldn't there be other areas that need hatching? Wouldn't the side of her face here? I just don't get. This has to go away. And I'm not going to delete it, but I'm going to be careful with like offending artists, but sometimes they just get crazy with hatching. They don't, you can't think about every line everywhere. That's, I mean, it just, this isn't, it doesn't seem like it's going to make sense. We're probably going to use a color hold to just make it less noticeable. This is an anatomy problem, okay? Look at where her hips are here and here and here. There are bones here and here. Little protrusions that happen on women who have a very low percentage of body fat. And this is not only not going to be in shadow, it's going to be the highest point. It's going to be a jut. There are hip bones right here that jut out. And so this actually needs to be an area the opposite of shadow, or part of it. There can be some shadow there. But that's a huge problem. We're going to have to figure out a way around that. I also downloaded, and this isn't to like, by any stretch of the imagination, I'm not crapping on anybody's work, even though I say that. It's like, with all due respect. But I'm going to show you some problems I've seen in other people that have colored these flats that are available. Let's see here. So that's weird. Okay, these are the original inks. Here is the first drawing. Now I like that they, for whatever reason, it was really common for people to use red wax here, which seems somehow menstrual to me. And they are vampires, but it takes it in a weird direction when that wax is red. I think I have someone that used what. See when you use red wax, like it becomes like, this is like a soft, fun image, and you can tell by her, like, it's not meant to be gross. Red takes it in a gross direction. Color choice wise, this doesn't look like Morrigan, and this doesn't look like Vampirella. I don't know how important that is, but this brown color, again, like brown is the color of poop. It's hard to be wearing brown and have some type of sexy image. So be careful of your color choice. The grays too. This is kind of a grayish purple in here, and I mean, the focal point is here. I think that their skin colors are too close together. Someone needs to have very sallow skin. They are vampires, and the other one can be more realistic, so you can get contrast between them. But I'm going to try and keep the characters more closely related to their characters. And this is very airbrushed. There's a lot of airbrushing everywhere. And that can be soft and work really well on girls. But because you've left all this hatching and not had any color holds, to me it doesn't read. I don't know if real enough is the word, because there is something uncanny valley about this image. So you need to know it's a comic, otherwise it becomes weird. But so the color choice here is a couple of the problems that I have, and the roses are rendered really nicely, but then the candles were just kind of left in the lurch in terms of rendering. And I think that overall there's too much. It's too well lit. It's not dramatic. So I'm going to try and do something. And I looked at these just to see, like, what do you like about them? What do you not like about them? So what I can take from this image is that red roses and white wax look nice. Another problem is right here. Do you see how there's a little bit of rendering here, but you need this wax to feel three-dimensional. Otherwise, this whole plane looks really flat, and when it looks really flat, it doesn't push her hips back. When it doesn't push her hips back, the whole image becomes very flat, and then that's no bueno. And then the airbrushing on the wings, there needs to be some texture in here. You see the specks and and flicks, and those are and the rip here and here, those are indications of texture, so you need to give those texture. Here we've got much more dramatic lighting. I'd like to see something from the background and some other light source. I think the colors are colored very true to form. We get a little bit more contour, and the line art has been colored, so she looks much more real. I talked about the red wax and how that moves into the macabre, for me at least. And we have some other holds here that this arm actually looks really nice, and the highlights, they look appropriate. Her stockings don't have any texture in them, and you would think that these are those sheer stockings. It's kind of what I look at it, that should be semi-transparent. So coming through should be a bit of the skin color, then you should see some texture, or at least that's what I'm going to hope to do. They've ignored the roses totally and not rendered them, which they are just a background element, but I'd like to see some of that. The orange color that's reflected from the candle doesn't seem right to me. If this is, depending on the type of material, it's hard to tell what they think that this material is. It should be some type of latex. If it's going to stick like that, I mean, it's some type of otherworldly material, or her nipples are made out of steel. If it's latex, there's no way her nipples do that, so who knows? Or maybe there are molds in there. I don't know. I don't know enough about the character, but it's a little bit silly. Not much was done with her pants, but with the rim light, this shape actually looks really pleasing. I like the rendering here a lot, but I don't think that there's enough texture in the wings. This skin was given a lot of attention and a lot of texture, and then she was just we have kind of two competing styles of rendering skin. This is basically cel shaded, and I wouldn't be surprised if they overlaid some type of dark blue color and did all of it appears that that's what, dark blue, dark purple, maybe? Or I'm sorry, light blue, light purple, and used multiply to get all these shadows, and then airbrush this in, because these colors, they're all tie in together really, really nicely. But then when you have, it would have been fine if you had cel shaded this too, but blending these two very different styles with these textures in the skin is a little strange for me. And then there's no rendering of the fire. The fire is one of the coolest things to render, but you do have some ambient light, and it's very dramatic. So there's good stuff and bad stuff for me here. This is just my opinion, things that I'm thinking about as I go into color this thing. Here, whoops, we've got the red again. The blue flame is a good idea, but there's not a ton of. It's kind of introducing some blue in the flame I don't have a problem with. The value in Morrigan in general, these values are too close together. The areas don't separate. They wash out. I'm not sure what these kind of dirt spots or these weird spots are around here. One thing that I did like is that, look, even though I don't agree with the wax color, this is the first one that makes it look a little bit 3D. It's kind of popping up off there, and that gives you a better sense of where they are, of where the characters are in the frame. I still think that the wings need texture, and these two characters, their skins are very different, so I think that is good. That's a necessary thing, and I just like to see more. I mean, there's just not a lot of rendering in here. That's a big problem. They're not completely flat, but we need to see a much wider range of values. Even though I think that this one is the most sophomorically done, it's probably the one that I prefer. I think that the basic principles used here are stronger than some of the other artists that clearly have a lot more experience rendering. We still need some color holds. I want to show you one that I thought was really good. This was one of the entrants from the actual color battle thing. She has converted this basically into a painting. We've got good texture. Totally different skin. We've got a light source coming overhead. This is just excellently done. Notice that it's not like there's a ton more done with the candles, right? You don't need to do a lot to just make. It's just about color choice here. There's just 1, 2, like three colors, something like that, and with a little bit of a gradient, and it just looks fantastic. The roses are rendered really nice. The wings have great texture. Uh, she's she's found a way to blend down all these kind of the offensive marks. She's given this thing an interesting texture. She's made it not latex, which I like. Uh, there's texture in here. It doesn't necessarily look like a stocking, but this looks like this is now no longer, it's out of the uncanny valley. It's very clearly a painting. Um, and that makes it almost more believable in a way. It makes it less bizarre, certainly, and much more friendly on the eye. And this is just really, really well done. Super well done. We have this soap bubble, bounced lights. I think that the idea is that it's an open ceiling and there's moonlight coming down. You can see that there's blue. There's a very cool light here, even though her skin is very warm. So it just all works. This works for me. I don't know what I'm going to do that's hyper different from this, but I really like that, and I thought that was a great handling of the image, and she addressed kind of some of the problems that I thought were problems as well. All right, so I'm gonna stop the narration right here. You guys can turn on music or do whatever it is you do, and I'm going to color, and I'll probably time lapse it at, depending on how long it takes, maybe usually about 3 times. You can still see what I do. And then at the end, I'll have a little section where I talk about what I did. Sometimes I use kind of strange techniques. So I hope this has been informative and helps you take on sexuality in comics, especially if that's something you like or something you like to draw or whatever. But I'm going to do my best to do this image and the Excellent Inks service. And I think I'm going to reflat this thing myself right now because there's some errors in the flatting. No offense to the original flattist, but you're using different inks than I am. So I'll provide the link below, and I'll see you once I'm done. So, looks like I forgot to turn the recorder on for the last half hour or something like that. But here is the finished image. I'm not happy with it at all. I don't think I learned anything about sexuality in comics other than it's just not fun for me. Like I didn't enjoy the process. I think part of it is that I've seen so many other people color this piece, and most people just turn it into a painting. I mean, they just cover like 99% of the line art with color holds or just delete things outright. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to, I don't know, make a version that was more true to whatever the artist originally intended. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of taking line art and just turning it into a painting. Um, if you're gonna paint, paint. Uh, don't. It's like painting with training wheels almost. I mean, there are some instances where it really works, but I went for something I guess much more subtle and less dramatic with all this candlelight splashed everywhere. This is just a bit softer and desaturated, and I mean, at least it's not anything like most of the others that I saw, but still, um, I don't like it at all. I think if I had spent some time with the wings and messed with opacity, I probably could have gotten a cool textury translucent effect there. But I've been staring at this thing as long as I want to, so I hope that at least watching me struggle with this thing, 'cause just really, it's. I mean, I'm a grown man. This stuff shouldn't make me uncomfortable to see two chicks doing this in a cartoon. But like I said at the beginning, like it wouldn't matter if it were girls or guys or three guys and three girls. I'm just like my my mind just keeps going. Why? Just why? Which is the same question I'm asking my dog because he's crying. Uh, so I hope you learned something. I used a lot of techniques. So I showed this to someone and they were like, "Well, why'd you use that texture for the wax?" And I did. You guys, if you watched the stream, and I'm gonna speed it up considerably. I painted that all in, and it looks weird. It doesn't look like wax. I don't know what it looks like. Uh, and now it's just that bottom piece there, the ledge that they're sitting on. I probably should have held that out and turned it into one big blob. But I kept, I guess, almost all of the line art. I kept a couple of the hatching pieces that I said were going to be a problem in on Vampirella. I don't know what I got out of this. Maybe once I let it soak in, I'll have gotten something. Um, I'm not happy with the result. I can tell you that. But I wasn't happy with the. How are you going to be happy with? Maybe that's the lesson. How are you going to be happy with the result if you're not really into the line art to begin with? I don't know. All right. I'll be back soon with something hopefully less. Ugh. Later.